Steuben started disappearing, and why not one of them was found till Christmas Eve in 1983. 1. Junkman. This is the car they drove from Vigor, Indiana to Steuben, North Carolina. A silver gray Renault 18i Deluxe wagon, an 81 model with about 40,000 miles on it, 25,000 of which they had put on it themselves. The paint was just beginning to get tiny rust-colored pockmarks in it, but the wiring had blown about 15 fuses, and they'd had to put 3 new drive axles in it because it was designed so that when a ball bearing wore out, you had to replace the whole assembly. It couldn't climb a hill at 55, but it could seat 2 adults in the leather bucket seats and 3 kids across the back. Step Fletcher was driving, had been driving since they finally got away from the house well after noon. Empty house. He was still hearing echoes all the way to Indianapolis. Somewhere along the way he must have passed the moving van, but he didn't notice it or didn't recognize it, or maybe the driver had pulled into a McDonald's somewhere or a gas station as they drove on by. The others all fell asleep soon after they crossed the Ohio River. After Step had talked so much about flatboats and Indian wars, the kids were disappointed in it. It was the bridge that impressed them, and then they fell asleep. DeAnne stayed awake a little longer, but then she squeezed his hand and nestled down into the pillow she had jammed into the corner between the seat back and the window. Just how it always goes, thought Step. She stays awake the whole time I'm wide awake, and then, just as I get sleepy and maybe need to have her spell me for a while at the wheel, she goes to sleep. He pushed the tape the rest of the way into the player. It was the sweet, junky sound of the E Street Shuffle. He hadn't listened to that in a while. DeAnne must have had it playing while she ran the last-minute errands in Vigor. Step had played that album on their second date. It was kind of a test. DeAnne was so serious about religion, he had to know if she could put up with his slightly wild taste in music. A lot of Mormon girls would have missed the sexual innuendos entirely, of course, but DeAnne was probably smarter than Step was, and so she not only noticed the bit about girls promising to unsnap their jeans and the fairies in a real bitch fight, she also got the part about hooking onto the midnight train. But she didn't get upset, she just laughed, and he knew it was going to be okay. She was religious but not a prig, and that meant that he wouldn't have to pretend to be perfect in order to be with her. 10 years ago, 1973. Now they had 3 kids in the back of the Renault 18i wagon, probably the worst car ever sold in America, and they were heading for Steuben, North Carolina, where Step had a job. A good job. $30,000 a year, which wasn't bad for a brand-new history PhD in a recession year, except that he wasn't teaching history. He wasn't writing history. The job was putting together manuals for a computer software company. Not even programming. He couldn't even get hired for that, even though Hacker Snack was the best-selling game for the Atari back in '81. For a while there, it had looked like his career was made as a game designer. They had so much money they figured they could afford for him to go back to school and finish his doctorate. Then the recession came, and the lousy Commodore 64 was killing the Atari in the stores, and suddenly his game was out of print, and nobody wanted him except as a manual writer. So Springsteen played along to his semi-depressed mood as Step wound the car up into the mountains, the sun setting in the west as the road angled them mostly east into the darkness. I should be happy, he told himself. I got the degree, I got a good job, and nothing says I can't do another game in my spare time, even if I have to do it on a stupid 64. It could be worse. I could have got a job programming apples. Despite what he said to encourage himself, the words still tasted like failure in his mouth. 32 years old, 3 kids, and I'm on the downhill slope. Used to work for myself, and now I have to work for somebody else, just like my dad with his sign company that went bust. At least he had the scar on his back from the operation that took out a vertebra. Me, I got no visible wounds. I was riding high one day, and then the next day we found out that our royalties would be only $7,000 instead of $40,000 like the last time. And we scrambled around looking for